Good morning everyone and welcome to my first tutorial video. So let me tell you a little bit about why I decided to make this video. So I have been home roasting coffee with an air popper for about four or 5 years now. And since then I have made a few modifications to now two poppers. The first one, I'll talk a little bit about that. I just took a simple Presto Poplite. It's actually sitting right here that I picked up at the thrift store. It looks a little bit ghetto. I'm sorry about that. Even got like cardboard on there to mark like temperatures and things like that. There's a bunch of random holes drilled in it. But so what I did with this popper is my dad is actually an electrician and he helped me do some slight modifications to it. We have put a dimmer switch on it so we can control the heating element inside the popper. What I want to do today is talk to you a little bit about how you can do this yourself. With this particular popcorn popper, again, I said it's a Presto Poplite. If you want the model number, I'm going to put a little bit of information below so you can do this on your own, hopefully at home, pretty easily. Now, the reason I wanted to make this video was because upon searching and looking through the internet, it was hard to find a specific model of popper. There's a lot of people who do this out there, but I wanted to make one for the Presto Poplite poppers exclusively. So this is the most recent popper that we've made mods to. This is another Presto Poplite that I picked up from a local thrift store in town for about $5. They're pretty much a dime a dozen, so it seems, at least every time I go in I look for them, and if they have one I purchase it. So what we did is we took this large electrical box here. You can pick these up at Home Depot fairly cheaply, and we've got a couple of dimmer switches. One is for, I believe this one is for the heat control, so that'll control the coils, and this one is for the fan actually. So this one we have two dimmer switches hooked up. And I want to talk to you about how you can go ahead and do this mod yourself. It was pretty easy. It took a lot of trial and error. We actually blew up one other popper that I had purchased. Again, it was only $3.99 at a Goodwill in Pittsburgh. So it wasn't a huge loss. It was actually kind of cool. There were some sparks. It wasn't anything spectacular. Actually, it wasn't that cool. It was kind of lame. But so you might blow up a couple, but know that they're not too expensive if you're buying them used. Buying them new, you're spending about $20. So if you're going to do mods, I suggest finding a used popper that you are not going to be too terribly upset about if you do accidentally hook something up wrong or make a mistake. But hopefully with this video, we can ensure that you're going to have what you're looking for in the modifications that you want to do to your popper. So I'm going to start by taking this guy apart and kind of showing you what's going on the inside of this particular popper. So we're now in the box, and as you can see, we have the two dimmer switches, the fan control, and we actually have a kind of basic transformer. I'll talk a little bit more about that later, and that's hooked up to the fan dimmer because of the amount of voltage that needs to be going to the fan in order to not make it explode like we did the other one. So again, I'll talk a little bit about that later. I'm going to continue kind of taking this apart so you can see a little bit more what's going on inside. Okay, now I've got the cover off of the actual popcorn popper. And now you see a lot of different wires happening in there from what you would normally see from the factory setup. But like I said, I'm going to show you what exactly we did, how we did it, and why we did it. So let's keep digging into this popcorn. What I'm pulling out here now is actually the fan and the heating element kind of assembled together. So I've got the heater and the fan separated right now. This part is the fan right here. There's the fan piece right there. And this is the motor that runs the fan. On here is a little diode. This diode, basically what it does is it turns AC current into DC. I am by no means a electrician or a person who knows the proper correct terms. That's my dad. So I am just going to basically tell you what wires to go where, and kind of sort of why, and what we've figured out and how to do this the correct way, without the fancy terms. Again, forgive me. So this is the heating element. Right here you have the switch. This switch, what it does is it kind of is a protection, a fail-safe. If things get too hot, this switch will shut things down before you burn up everything inside of your popcorn popper. Some people like to bypass this. We chose not to. We didn't think it was necessary because we are controlling the heat in the fan. If things get too hot, we can just turn them down, turn them off, and what have you. So now let's get in to talk about how we wired this up. I need to change a few things around here. As you can see, it's kind of a bloody mess. All right, so we're back in the box, and we have a couple of different things happening in here. We have transformer, we have the dimmer switch for the heat control, we have the dimmer switch for the fan control. These dimmer switches, my dad had these laying around the shop as extras. You can pick them up at Home Depot, and you need to make sure that they are a variable speed switch. They are just basically fan switches is all they are. So really any basic dimmer. Again, like I said, I will have more specific numbers and information and what exactly you would need to get in the comments section below or in the information about the video below. So let's start with just the dimmer switch for the heat control first. And for that one, because there's less wires, I'm just going to go to the other popcorn popper. So we're going to set this one to the side, and I'm going to get the other one out to show you that. So right now what we're going to do is we're going to take apart this other popcorn popper. Make sure you don't lose your screws or misplace them. That's important. You need those. So this popcorn popper just has this dimmer switch for the heat control on it. There's a little bit less wires and things happening inside of it, so it might be easier to see and understand kind of what's going on in here. And you'll get to kind of see also some more of the factory kind of setups that were there originally, which will be helpful for modifying your other one. So give me a few seconds here. Excuse me. Need some more coffee. Okay, so we're inside of the other popcorn popper, and we're going to show you how to hook up just a switch for the heating element. Like the other popcorn popper, this is the same exact wiring. We have right here our 110 volts coming in from the plug. So this red wire here goes right to this kind of panel here, and it goes through to the switch. This switch, same one as the other one, just a safety. You don't have to have it. We like to have it. So that's your hot, and then you have this piece here. So this wire here is for the fan. So that's going to be hooked up to the fan. We're not worried about that right now. We're worried about this wire here. So the wire on the end, not the one in the middle or on this end, the wire on this end right here, which I believe on the other one is just simply white. This is for the heating element right here. So we need to isolate that and hook that to the dimmer switch. So we're going to follow this wire here, and you're going to see that I have it capped off here with a wire coming out of the box that the dimmer switch is in. So this wire here coming from the panel is the power going to the dimmer switch for the heating element. And then what I did was, if you follow this wire back up to the dimmer switch here, there are 2 wires inside of there. The other one we have hooked on the other side here. And what we did was we just simply took that and hooked it right into the ground here. So on this one, again, it's controlled from the ground, and that is what allows you to amp up your heat or lower it down. Kind of confusing, I know. So let's kind of talk about a little bit the difference between this popper and the other one. So this popper obviously does not have the fan isolated on a dimmer switch, so things look a little bit differently than it does on the other popper. So we have this diode here. It's the same diode, same deal on the other popper, and we have this black wire here. You can see that red dot. Whoops, my finger is right there. That indicates that this is the ground side. So that is why it is hooked, obviously, to the ground wire coming in from your plug. So that's hooked into there, and also we have our dimmer switch for the heater also tied into that. Again, that's the ground for the fan. That is why those are hooked together, and that's how the fan is powered, because again, this diode takes in AC and turns it to DC. Here is where the other wire on the diode is connected in the system. It is tied in with this black wire here in the middle. The black wire in the middle on the other popper, we just did away with it, because if you hook it up the way that it is now, actually one switch will control both the heater and the fan. Again, you want those isolated so you're only controlling the fan. Because all 3 of these wires are tied to the same power. So we wanted direct power to the transformer. So that is why we did away with this wire. So that's kind of how this was hooked up originally, so you can kind of see what you're working with when you decide, if you decide to do this with your popper. So let's set this other popper aside and go back to the one with the fan control on it, and let's talk about how to wire that up. I apologize if this is a little confusing. I hope it's helpful, but let's keep trucking along here. Again, you don't want to lose this. I'm just going to set this on the floor here. I wasn't talking about the popper, I was talking about your screws. Don't want to lose it. It'll screw you up. So, back to this popper here. So we already talked about how to hook up your switch for the heat control. So let's now talk about how we did the fan. So if you hook the fan just directly up to the dimmer switch the same way that we hooked it up to the heating element, you're going to have problems. There's going to be too much power going to your fan. It's going to be bad and it'll explode, or it just won't work, probably because it's broken. So what you need is this transformer. You can pick them up on the internet. I think I saw them for like $10. Again, my dad just had this one laying around. Thanks, Dad. You're the coolest. So let's talk about how this transformer works and what it's doing for us in this particular situation. Okay, so on your transformer, on this side, you're going to have 2 wires coming out, a black and a black and a white. So that's going to be from the factory, black and white. Might be another color, I don't know, depending on the transformer. So this is the side where your 110 volts is going to be coming in. Okay, so this black wire here, we took and connected that directly to our 110 coming from our plug. Okay, we hook that directly into the 110 coming from the plug, which is also connected to, again, this red wire here on this panel here for the heating element and the rest of the popper. So that is how our transformer is receiving power. And then we took the ground, which is the white wire here, and we hooked this white wire up to the dimmer switch for the fan. So we have the ground for the dimmer switch for the fan hooked up on this side here. Okay, so that's how that's hooked up. And then, okay, the other wire for the dimmer switch, okay, we have one hooked up to the ground from the transformer. Then we have the other wire on the dimmer switch, which is black. They're both black. They're going to be the same color probably. Doesn't matter which way you hook them up. So this black wire here from the dimmer switch, we're going to follow this wire here, and that is going to our ground. So like I said, we have our other wire coming from the dimmer switch going to the ground. So this red wire here is the other wire from the dimmer switch going to the ground from our plug here. Okay, so we have one side of the dimmer switch hooked up to the ground, and we have the other side hooked up to the ground side of the transformer. We have 110 coming into the transformer from our plug over here, and that's that for the fan dimmer switch. Okay, now on the other side of the transformer, so this is where our 25 volts are coming out. So this is converting 110 to 25 being the maximum, which is what our fan motor can handle. We have a black wire and a white wire. Now this is extra wire that we had, so you're gonna need some extra wire. So if you have an old plug that you can cut up, or maybe just go out and buy a plug or some extra wire spares if you know someone that has it lying around, like my father. So we take this black wire, okay, and this is coming in from the load side of the transformer. So it says load right above where this wire is connected there on the transformer, okay, and we're going to follow it to here on the diode. So remember, the red dot indicates the ground side of the diode. This is going to be the power side of the diode. So the black wire marked with orange right here is going into this side of the diode, okay? Now the white wire from the transformer, so this wire here, that is also marked with orange, and it is going to the ground side of the diode. So this wire here is marked white. We have the red dot here. It's hooked up to the ground side here. Okay, so these two wires from the diode were freed up and now are connected directly to our transformer. This black wire here, what this is was originally on our factory setup. This was also powering the fan. Like I said, if you hook up to this wire, you're going to have the same switch that controls your heat controlling the fan as well. So you don't need this wire, just cap it off. You can leave it in there just hanging out. So that's how you set up for the fan. So I figured you guys would want to see just what this popper can do. So I'm going to plug it in and fire up for a minute and show you how it works. So right now I'm about to turn on the fan. That's low, medium, okay. And then I can turn it off, and you can kind of hear the whine of the coil heating up. So I can control it with these knobs. It's great. I love it. I'm going to continue to keep you guys posted on how it works for me. And and hopefully post another video soon. Alright, so we kind of talked about the wiring and how to make all those modifications. Now I kind of want to talk a little bit about these poppers specifically. Things that I like about them, things that I don't really like about them. I guess the things that I like about them is that they're easy to find and they're usually fairly cheap. What's tough is that there aren't a lot of videos about these particular poppers. There's a couple that are really great. A video that I used, I'll drop a link to him. He's the one who helped me kind of figure out how to hook up the switch for the heat control. But these poppers also seem to be pretty resilient. I've been roasting with this guy here, like I said, for about 4 or 5 years, and it's been treating me well. It does a great job. I enjoyed a cup of Colombian honey washed this morning that I roasted last night. I usually like to wait a little bit longer to drink it, but I didn't have any other coffee, so I drank it pretty fresh, which was still good. It was great. But anyways, so the other thing that I kind of don't really enjoy about this roaster is the way that the air comes out of the chamber into like your roasting chamber. So it comes out like straight out of one hole, which is fine. But the only thing I don't really like about that, sorry, is that the way that it agitates the beans is just it kind of blowing up from the middle, and the beans are kind of swirling around, but they're not really circulating very well. If you can find one, excuse me, that has kind of like, I guess it looks like almost like fan blades along the side, and they're kind of going in a certain direction. Those are actually going to spin the beans in a circle and kind of agitate them a little bit better. I found that, friends that have those, it tends to work better for them. But again, I guess it's a personal preference type of thing. I went ahead on this roaster and drilled a couple of more holes where the air comes out. That has seemed to help a little bit. So that kind of worked out for me. I haven't done that to my other one yet. I plan on doing that maybe after messing around with it some more. So that's one thing that I don't really like, and really that's the only thing I don't like about this roaster, is just the way that the air is coming out and agitating the beans. And the nice thing about the fan control is that because of the air only coming out in one spot and it's blowing up, the beans tend to like blow everywhere and sometimes make a mess. You can build like chimneys and things like that, but I like to actually be able to watch the beans as I'm roasting them, and I have a stick. Let's see if I have it here. Yes, I have this piece of dowel rod that I use to agitate the beans throughout the whole roast. That way, I see that it's ensuring the beans are getting an even roast. They're all, receiving, in theory, the same amount of heat. It's hard because there's a lot of variables that go into effect. When you're using an air roaster, ambient temperature is huge. So right now it's like 13 degrees out where I'm at in Ohio, and I got to roast outside because it does make a big mess. I don't have a chaff collector, again, because I like to be able to stir the beans and be in there throughout the whole roast, kind of monitoring my times. And with that dimmer switch on my heat, I can turn it up as the beans start to change and go through, first crack, second crack, and then also in the early stages as they're yellowing, so I ensure that they're not getting that baked taste if it's taking too long or if it's happening too fast. So I've been able to pull different times. Usually my roasts are around 14 to 15 minutes long, and I've been pretty happy with that, especially with these modifications. That's been a huge thing, to be able to control that heat, and now the fan as well. Because what that does is less air is moving over the coils, so your kind of radiant heat changes a little bit, because when the fan is higher, those coils actually are cooling because of the air blowing over them, because it's not blowing hot air, it's just pulling air from the outside. So that's actually cooling your coils. So when you turn the fan speed down, what you can do is change that radiant heat so it's actually getting a little bit warmer inside your roasting chamber. And last night when I roasted for the first time in the newly modified popper, I found that was pretty helpful because it's cold, and it made things go a little bit, normally at the end as I was finishing my roast. So being able to turn the fan speed down really was helpful because as they roast, the beans get lighter and they become less dense. So they're more liable to fly out with that fan speed high up. I'm going to put this down. And being able to turn that fan switch down, like I said, kind of calms them down a bit. You still want to be agitating. I'm a big proprietor of just constantly stirring your roast. Yeah, after about 15 minutes, your forearm gets tired, your wrist gets tired, but it's a good workout for your hands. You can switch them up. But yeah, so those are things that I like, things that I don't like, things that have worked for me. I'm going to continue roasting. I really enjoy it. I enjoy coffee. Who knows where this will take me. But I hope this was helpful, and I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, tips, helpful hints that you've found as you've done your own modifications to your roaster, I'd be glad to hear from you. My email is available as well through the YouTube channel. So hit me up, and happy roasting.